Let's talk today about all things tubes. We're going to cover butyl, latex, TPU, and tubeless. Question before I get started. Do you actually want to see my face talking in the corner of the screen, or is this just fine where you're seeing things pop up here? Look, I can even show myself riding all cool at a bicycle. This was at the horribly hilly hundreds. And you know what? Here's the secret. I was not riding in the drops the entire time. I saw the photographer there and I thought it would be, let's see how I look in the drops if I get down there. So I don't know. There are certainly a lot of opinions on tubes, and so there is always going to be the tubeless is better, and it's not. I'm going to give you my perspective, and my perspective is the TPU wins out. It's not even close at how much better it is than tubeless, but this is my opinion. This is what works for me. If something else works for you, I think that that's wonderful. As long as you're out there riding, I am more than happy. But I see so often that folks are just so irritated at like something like tubes or TPU, especially. A lot of hate towards it. I don't see. Look at how happy TPU Tube Man is. It's like where did the tube touch you? Did it touch you here? Did it touch you here? Did it touch you? Butyl is the place we will start. That is the most common tube. Most bikes come with it from the shop. It is the most available. It is probably the cheapest. And it's just the one you'll find as spares the most as well, because even if you have moved on to other tubes or tubeless, there's a good chance you probably have a bunch of these butyls laying around somewhere. There are variations of it. So light butyl, for example, is one. There's others such as self-sealing, thorn-proof. Now, I've seen only descriptions of these on the internet. I'm not familiar with them, so I can't really comment on them. I will just stick to the specifics in the pros and cons that I can comment on. Because I do think that while I prefer TPU, that is the TLDR of this, TPU wins, that there is a time and a place for others because it could be a preference of yours. But just so that you know, this video will be biased towards TPU, and it is my perspective, and if you don't agree with it, then that is great. Probably the biggest pro is that if you do not like to feel any road buzz or like feedback from the road, as I would call it, butyl is probably the one for you. It is the most dampening out of all of them. And if you look at my riding here, I think at this point I had flatted. I was riding on latex, both front and rear. At this point, all I had was a butyl to replace it with. It was actually a mess. I'll chat about that on the ride when I actually post that video. But I already had a butyl in here, and after riding for several hours, I could immediately feel that all of a sudden my front wheel felt much more disconnected from me. So if you don't like feeling the buzz at all, then butyl is probably the way for you to go. The disadvantage of it, and probably the biggest one, the heavier, sure, yeah, I can feel a slight difference when the bike gets going. I can't say that I feel much of a difference in terms of it being heavier once you're actually rolling. Only in getting started, there's just a bit more snap if you're going with any of the lighter options. But the real negative for me is going to be that it takes more space in the saddlebag. And of course, if you go with a variation like lightweight, you are losing some of like the puncture protection and the positives that butyl offers. Latex. Latex is one that I flipped to and rode for years and loved it because it has this kind of springy, almost bouncy feel. There's like a sound that you hear, especially if there's no cars around. I don't know how to describe it. It's almost like going from carbon to titanium. There's like a zinginess to it. That's why I have it in the pros. You may not like it. That's why I also put it in the cons, because it's not necessarily for everybody. Also, the other thing is it loses air really quickly. When I go out for like a long ride, if I'm out there for 8 to 12 hours on some incredibly long ride, I'm probably maybe checking my air pressure at some point if there's a rest stop. Price is also a little bit high and kind of all over the place. But one big downer, and maybe it isn't, but mentally it is for me, is that if you need a longer stem, my wheels have a depth of, I believe, 60 or 65. So I have a 40 and a 40 mil extender, and the valve is not available as one single piece. You always have to use this extender. I fear that there's always going to be a little bit more air loss out of there, and it's like, do you use that little like pipe tape or the thread tape on it or not? They say you don't have to, but for some reason I just feel better when I do. And when you're changing a latex from the other, then I have to sit there and undo the connector, which I spent so much time tightening to make sure it doesn't come loose. And so it's not really amazing. If I ever punctured, I would flip to TPU, come home, and then go back to latex. And then they are just a little bit more finicky to install because they can kind of get bunched up in there. I would worry about it a little bit less with butyl, but for some reason latex just feels more finicky. Now let me focus on tubeless because I came down on it quite a bit. So pros, and the reality is that I feel that there's really just this one pro. You get fewer flats, and you're less susceptible to pinch flats. But these pinch flats are offset by burping, and I'll chat about that in just a second. So yes, technically, if everything works perfectly, you've got the right sealant and it seals, then then you're great. You keep going. Maybe you've lost like 10, 20 psi, hopefully less, and you do just top off and be on your merry little way. Also, plugs are more compact, but even though you're carrying plugs, you still probably should carry an extra tube in case like it's a big enough cut. And so I don't know, really, this is my only real pro. These I kind of added so that the list didn't feel totally one-sided and completely biased, but doesn't always seal. You have to find the right sealant. That sealant, by the way, is going to stain your floor or your wherever you spill it on. If somebody you're riding with in a group like punctures in front of you, that sealant that goes onto your bike is going to be a pain to clean. And if it gets on your jersey, it gets on your bibs, that stain isn't going anywhere, so that's going to be permanent. Fewer tire choices, and the prone to burping. This happened to me a couple of times, and I did see 2 catastrophic failures. One this year and one last season where guys were going through the corner, their tires burped because they impacted something. Actually, one guy was not going through a corner. He just hit kind of a big enough one of those bumps in the road where the pavement kind of just curls up on itself. Tire kind of like shifted off for a second because we could see sealant on the road where he impacted, and he went down immediately. His front end just went out from under him. The other guy it happened to was last season. He was going through a corner, hit a bump, his tire burped, and you could see because there was sealant splatter like on his rim, and lost all his pressure and went down. The tire stayed on, but he went down from that. That right there, it was just enough for me to, plus my own experience of kind of having a rear end slide out on me in a similar situation was enough for me to say goodbye to tubeless. Again, my opinion and my opinion only, worst choice for the road ever. And somebody's going to say, but Michael, I don't have to stand there changing a tube while cars zip by me at 362 miles per hour on the side of, you know what? Like, we've all changed tubes just fine for decades and just move a little bit further off the road. We have these mini electric pumps. Takes what, like 5 minutes to change a tube? Let's call it 7. 50 seconds or so for me to get up to 80 psi using the Psych Plus. Now let's get to the pros of the TPU. And remember, as I said before, TPU wins. I think it's a great all-around choice. Is it the best rolling resistance? No. There are differences. Tubeless is the best rolling resistance. I think over TPU, you're saving about maybe up to 2 watts per wheel. So 4 watts in total, 3 to 4 watts, I think is what I looked at before. You are saving. Latex has a little bit better rolling resistance, so tubeless you are saving still a watt, maybe a watt and a half per wheel. But again, that to me isn't worth it. TPU lightweight, fits really easily in the saddlebag because it's compact, close enough. Rolling resistance, puncture protection. So here's the thing. I ripped somehow a strap on my Garmin watch, and so I was no longer able to strap it. So I went ahead and took the strap off, and the tubes that I was using, the TPU tubes, I just sliced one of them and kind of made my own little band out of it, tied a knot around it, and had to puncture a hole in it in order for the little clasp to seal through so that it would stay on my wrist. And when I did that, it was actually not easy. I thought it would be super easy to just puncture through it with a screwdriver tip. No, that didn't work that way. I had to take my pocket knife and really, really press in there. It took a second for it to puncture. So I don't have any puncture world tests out on the road, but I do have them just from my pocket knife. on the watch, which I ended up holding on my wrist just fine until the replacement showed up. Easy to install. I kind of don't worry about them twisting around like latex because they're a lot less bulky, less air loss. And then the choice of stem length, this was the big one because the stem length, two things. One is that the ones on the new TPUs, they're still the old ones, and this is the big thing. That when you're getting the TPUs, I do not like the ones that have the plastic stem. I just don't feel good about it. I've had them warp a little bit left, right. I know that it's probably not a big deal, and after 6 months or whatever, you can change it. But what I like is having a metal stem with the threads so that I can use like the little washer and lock it down to my rim. I think that that is absolutely the way to go. So that kind of limits my choices because there are too many options of TPU. There is a choice of this, and there's one that is the better rolling resistance, and there's one that's best all around, and they've got all of them available. I think it was Cycling Weekly or somebody like that wrote about all of them. So that's an option for you if you're so into it. But I look for the ones with a metal stem that is threaded that I can just make sure that it's secured down to my rim. Long story short, for me, TPU wins. I think it's the best all-around choice. You really can't go wrong with it. You can carry multiples. You're not worrying about sealant and did your sealant dry out and yada, yada. Yeah, I think I puncture maybe tops of once per season over the course of about 7,000 miles. TPU is the way to go. I'm going to go ahead and spend those few minutes to change it, and then I don't have to worry about sealant at the start of the season or at the end of the season. That's all I've got for you. If you disagree, if you want to do old man yells at TPU, I completely understand. You have your preference. This was just my opinion, and hopefully it helped you guys out.